NBK released its numbers. And why NBK is a subject of interest is because, of course, now it is a subsidiary of KCB. And one of the key concerns we've been having around NBK is especially on the asset quality and looking at their non-performing loans pile when they were being taken up by KCB. I'm curious to know what you made of NBK numbers that were released just, I think, early this week, and how perhaps this is being viewed by investors.
So MBK's numbers were positive, which we viewed it, since now it's a part of KCB, that reflects positively on KCB. Our key concern, as you rightly mentioned, was the non-performing loans. So that had really impacted the bank, and KCB had to inject additional capital and change the management. So seeing that there's actually been a turnaround in the short period KCB has taken over the bank, we view that as positive. However, most investors had priced KCB because of the acquisition of NBK, that viewed KCB negatively. And so given this positive development, that view is likely to change.
I see. Justina, on the NBK?
I liked the numbers I saw for NBK. I think it was about time we saw some good news from NBK. It's positive that the numbers are coming now after the merger, which a lot of us were very speculative about, because NBK's NPL ratio has been the highest for the longest time. And the one thing I'm positive about is KCB's capacity to turn that bank around. So, because now they're not just assimilating the bank into KCB right away, it's going to operate as a separate entity for 2 years. So I think KCB's influence for those 2 years is going to be a good influence on the bank for them to turn around before they are now assimilated into KCB completely. So I think NBK is headed in the right direction right now.
I see.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll leave Martin out of that NBK conversation, but I would like us to switch gears and talk about, speaking about the earnings season, Safaricom, of course, which has the highest market capitalization at the NSE, released its numbers on Friday last week, and that was for the half year ended September 2019. And there were a lot of interesting aspects around these numbers. I spoke to their CFO, and I don't know whether my director has that clip ready on the side. I spoke to CFO Satish Kamath, and we looked at Safaricom numbers, and let's just listen to how this conversation went about. Let's listen in. We're still at the point where, from my optic, we're seeing the top line growing relatively weak when the bottom line is growing robustly. And I'm looking for the growth story for Safaricom. Just comment on this, please.
During transformation phases, I would encourage us not to look at the short-term results, but look at the fundamentals which is going to drive the results in the medium and long term. This year, our net additions of customers was far stronger than what we have done in the past. Our M-Pesa business has again delivered close to 20% growth year over year, which is fundamentally strong.
I noticed that the mobile revenue numbers are just up 4%. And we're at a stage where we're looking at a repricing strategy by Safaricom. And I'm just curious to know, how do you see this evolving as far as the mobile data revenue is concerned?
See, I'm very encouraged with the fundamentals of mobile data. Sequentially, from second half of last year to this first half, sequentially we have grown 14.6%. This is as a result of correcting the mobile data pricing to make them customer friendly in the second half of last year, which gave us roughly 14% increase in customer base, which is delivering in the first half of this year.
From an investor looking at Safaricom, one of the risks that we are now pricing in is in terms of the legislation which is being proposed in Parliament, which could see the separation between mobile money and the main business. How do you see this being priced in by investors sitting from your position?
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate. Investors love when they have visibility of all the opportunities and risks. And the legislation like this, which keeps coming on and off, just adds to the complication that investors do. I would like to believe that if we get this overhang out and put a really clear regulatory framework, investors will start looking at Safaricom stock from a completely different perspective.
Right, and that was my conversation with Safaricom CFO Satish Kamath. focusing on their half-year numbers, and I'd like to get the panel's thoughts around a number of elements around Safaricom. First is because they have a new appointment for the late Bob Collymore replacement. May his soul rest in peace. And I'd just like to get your thoughts, Sarah. What do you think of this election?
I think they selected a good candidate. He is, unlike previous CEOs who are part of the group, he is an outsider. However, something to note is that the strategy of Safaricom is changing. So Safaricom was predominantly telco. Now it's moving more towards mobile money. So we've seen M-Pesa gradually contribute more to Safaricom's revenue. So it's currently contributing 30% of the of Safaricom's revenue.
Yes.
And so for that reason, they need someone who can focus more in terms of a change in strategy. And I think the new appointment is the ideal candidate for that. And in terms of Safaricom culture, I think he's got a competent team supporting him. So I'm not worried at all.
Okay.
Yes.
Justina?
I have faith in Peter Ndegwa. I think his background in FMCG might be a good influence on Safaricom. Maybe he will give a different approach towards growing Safaricom's revenues. Maybe they might approach the different revenue lines as FMCGs. Maybe he will introduce a different outlook on that. I also think Safaricom is bigger than one person.
Yeah.
There's a lot of influence from Vodafone, so the company is still in good hands.
I see. And Martin, she mentioned, by she I mean Sarah mentioned that it's moving more into the mobile money. And I was expecting a retail banker in this election, but of course they selected Peter Ndegwa. What are your thoughts around this selection?
Me too. Because they talked about, it's all about fintech. The strategy now going, it's towards fintech, M-Pesa. So we're expecting, I'm pretty sure a lot of the market players are expecting a banker and a retail banker for that matter. But during the analyst call with the management, that is on Friday at 4 p.m., an analyst asked the choice for Peter Ndegwa. His track record is impeccable, no doubt. But the question is from an FMCG now leading telco, and we're moving towards the fintech. They're moving towards fintech space, and they've chosen an FMCG person. So the point that Safaricom CEO, the acting CEO, that is Mr. Michael Joseph, said that which caught our attention was that since we are limited to, we were only to choose a Kenyan, our scope was limited, which I found a bit I can't say the word controversial, but basically you get the drift. His track record is impeccable, and they were only to get a Kenyan to take up the helm. However, to echo what my colleagues are saying, that the corporate governance of Safaricom is solid. When the late Bob went on sick leave, you notice that the company was running smoothly, investors, no jitters. So there are no keyman risks in Safaricom, unlike, unfortunately, like Equity Bank suffer from keyman risk, and to a great extent, Cooperative Bank as well suffer from keyman risks, which I think the respective managements are trying to water down as time goes on. Yes.
All right, and let's look at the numbers that were posted. I was a bit concerned that when you look at the top line, and by top line I mean the service revenue, it was growing by only about 5%, which I think was the lowest ever since I began looking at Safaricom, even as the net earnings remained significantly solid, I would say. And I'm wondering, and as I was asking Satish on the interview, where is the growth story for Safaricom? For an investor who would be looking at this particular counter, I'm curious to know what you think, Sarah.
I think the growth story is on M-Pesa. So we've seen increased competition within the mobile space. So previously, Safaricom did not care much about competition because it was a market leader. It had invested a lot in that space. And so even with the price cuts, from its competitors, that wasn't an issue. The customers would still prefer Safaricom because of the quality of the network. However, customers have become more price sensitive, and so they're slowly moving to their competitor because of the lower prices. So Safaricom, over the past few years, is that it's slowly lost its market share, and so that's a reason for concern. And then so what they've done is that they've been reducing the prices. So we've had a cut in the voice tariffs, we've had a cut in mobile data, and given that people are using less of voice, so people prefer more what we call the OTC, so that would include mobile data and things like that to communicate, so the WhatsApp. And so voice, which was traditionally the key revenue earner, has actually contracted. In the first quarter, revenue was lower. And then SMS also revenue also declined. Yeah. So voice and SMS are slowly declining. So focus is now on M-Pesa, data, mobile data and fixed data. In terms of mobile data, there is concern that because of the competition, where prices are lower, and actually today there was a story that Airtel is actually considering to lower its prices further, which would actually probably force Safaricom to further lower its prices. So there is concern that that might not grow as high. Mm-hmm. However, Safaricom has got room to grow even as the prices reduce. As it reduces its prices, it can increase the number of users, and also the what we call ARPU, average revenue per user. Yes. So it's about increasing, making customers realize that they need more of mobile data, and so it's investing in 4G network. So which I think is key. Its competitor is not doing that. So as people get that experience of 4G network, you'll realize they'll actually use more of that internet. So even as the cost of that bundle reduces, an individual will use more, which would be positive for Safaricom. And then also currently around only 52% of its customers use the mobile data. So if it can increase that, it doesn't have to increase the size of the customer base. It just could also just increase the size of the number of clients who are using the mobile data space. Okay. Yeah, and then in fixed data, under fixed data, it's investing on the cable, fiber cable, and we see that has been positive. So it's gained market share, and so yeah, going forward, I think so the key drivers: mobile data, fixed data, and M-Pesa.
All right, yeah. Justina, your thoughts? The top line was weak, even as the bottom line remained strong. What were your take-homes from the numbers?
Yes, the top line was weak because the revenues for especially voice, which has been the traditional leader in revenues, is now declining. Yeah. But when you look at voice and SMS as individual business lines, they've hit maturity. So this was bound to happen. We were bound to see a slowdown or even a decline. Okay.